Hi everyone, this is Sarah from Sarah Beth Photography. You can find me at Sarah Beth Photo Indie on Instagram, facebook.com/Sarah Beth Photo Indie as well. I chose 4 images to edit for you today in Photoshop. So this is an indoor studio newborn session. This one here is sunset. I guess it's more, there's not really a lot of sun there, but it was at sunset. This is cloudy day, overcast, and then this one here is more sun. So all 4 of these are straight out of the camera. No edits have been made to them, nothing in ACR or anything like that. And I also will, for you guys, pull up the properties of each image here so you can see what the settings were, because I messed that a lot too. So this one right here, it was with a Nikon D700, which is what I shoot with all the time. I use a 35mm 1.4 lens, so this shot was at 1.4. My ISO was 800, shutter speed 1000, and again the 35mm lens. So I wanted you all to see that, and I'll pull that up for every image for you. Before I get started editing, I am going to say a couple things. I edit in Photoshop using my own action sets. Now, I'm not doing this tutorial to try to convince you all you need my actions to edit, but this is simply, an editing library where I show you how I work. So I want to make sure you guys understand that I don't hand edit everything. I use curves in Photoshop, which is right here. You can see that where my mouse is. Often, I use curves often. And a few other tools in the toolbar over here. But a majority of my editing is using my own action sets that I have made. So, it just makes my workflow easier, and I can batch quickly, and I just love using them. So you guys will see me using actions in Photoshop today. Okay, so this one right here, I am going to run, I have an indoor light action set that I use for all my indoor sessions. I'm going to run the Simple Goodness action right here, and that's what it does there. So this is before the action, and this is with Simple Goodness run at 100%. Now you can open up the action over here in layers and adjust each part of the action here. The opacity, you can adjust it here as you want to, but I will just leave it as is, flatten that out by going up to layers and flatten, and use curves. So right here on the right hand side, I'm circling it with my mouse. So that's the curves button, and I'm going to pull down to make it just a tad bit darker for my liking. It was just a little too bright for me. So if you can see that, I pulled down this curves layer here just a tiny bit to make it a little bit darker, and then flatten that out. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I run portraiture on a lot of my newborn sessions, so I go up to filter, it's a plug-in, filter, portraiture, whoop, sorry, here you go. So my settings are already like defaulted here in portraiture, so I am just going to hit OK. And that's it. Just smooths out the skin very slightly. I don't like it to be super heavy-handed, but it's an easy one-click wonder in my opinion. So the last thing I'm going to do for this image here is I'm going to go over to my eyedropper tool here on the left-hand side of my screen, and if you hover over it, it'll show you that it's the eyedropper tool. Click. I'm going to pick a color over here on the bed that I want to use. You can see it show up right here in the corner. Go to my brush tool right here, make my brush a little bit bigger, decrease the opacity to about 50%, and I'm going to brush over that just to kind of smooth that edge right here. You can see how I did that. I'm going to do the same thing over here. Go to my eyedropper tool, find my brush, and then just kind of smooth that out there, just to make it look a little bit more seamless. So that is all I would do to that image. What I did was I ran Simple Goodness, I darkened the image a little bit in curves, ran portraiture, and then I used my brush to just kind of smooth out that comforter bedspread she was sitting on. And that is all I would do there. This next one here, let me pull up the oops, I don't want to do that. I want to pull up properties. Okay, so here are the details of this shot right here. Oh, whoops, is this a copy? Hang on. Let's try that again. I do not know why they're not pulling up. I might have to pull it up here off my external. Here we go. Sorry about that. Okay, let's pull these all back in. Okay. So for this image right here, here are the properties. So Nikon D700, f-stop 1.4, ISO 400, shutter speed 2000. Can see that? Okay. So that is for this image. Okay, for this one, the first thing I'm going to do is go to curves and brighten it a little bit. Right there. Lower, flatten that curves layer. I'm going to run Color Pop, which is exactly what it says it is. It's a Color Pop. It's in my Sunset collection here. I never run it at 100% because that's just way too contrasty for me. So I go over the layers and decrease the opacity to about 40%. I flatten layers between every action that I run. It's habit. I know there are shortcuts. It's just, at this point, habit, and I do it the same way every time. Okay, so Color Pop first. The next thing I'm going to do is run from my Matte and Haze set, Summer Matte, at about 40%. Then I'm going to go back to my Sunset collection and run, where is it? Set the Mood right here. It's another warming action. It's just a little bit heavier handed than Summer Matte. And I'm going to back that down to about 40% opacity. I'm going to go back into curves and brighten just a little bit more. There we go. And then I'm going to run Little Vignette, which is what I call a finishing action, and I run it a lot on my outdoor images. It just creates a very simple, light-handed vignette around your image just to add some dimension. And that's it. So what I did on this one here is I ran Color Pop at about 40 to 50%, then Summer Matte at about 40%, Set the Mood at 50%, I believe, and then ran Little Vignette over it. And that is all I did to that one. Again, I didn't make any edits in ACR or anything like that. Okay, this one here is straight out of camera. I am going to do a simple edit on this, and the reason I wanted to show you all this was because my edits are very simple. I spend little to no time editing each image for a client because I try really hard to get it right in camera straight at the bat. So I do small changes on every image. This one is a way more heavy-handed than I typically do on any typical session, but I wanted to pull this and edit it for you guys to show you that. This one isn't going to look a ton different once I get done editing it, but it's just going to be enhanced a little bit. My goal is always to pull images into Photoshop with the intention of making it quick, easy, simple edits that don't really change the image too much, just enhances a little bit. So here we go. Okay, for this one here, oh, let me pull up properties for you guys. Sorry, I'm probably should have done all of that before I started recording, but now that we're going, let me see here. There we go, it is that one. Okay. Take one with the D700, 35 1.4 lens. My ISO was 250, exposure time 1600, and I shot this at 1.4. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do on this one is I'm going to go up to filters and run portraiture just to smooth everything out. So there you can see it just kind of smoothed very slightly. I'm going to go to my clone tool right here and get rid of this little sunspot on her hair. I don't know if you use the clone tool or the patch tool, but I prefer the clone tool. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to brighten these two without losing the integrity of this sunny haze that I have behind them. So the way I do that is I go over to curves, brighten their faces a little bit, and before I flatten out this curves layer, I go over to my eraser over here on the left hand side of my screen, and I erase that layer off of the background. So they are brighter, their faces are anyway, but I still keep that darker color behind them. So flatten that out. I am going to go to my matte finish action, which is part of the Sunset collection. I'm going to run that. I am going to go back to my eraser tool at like a 50% opacity. As you can see, I'm changing that up here. And I am going to take a little bit of that off of her face and arm, just so that I like the background being more matte, but I don't want her face completely hidden in that. So we're just going to remove some of that. Okay. Flatten that out. I am going to run Summer Matte at a very low opacity just to add a little bit more warmth and haze. So that's at about 40%. Flatten, and then I'm going to go over on my matte and haze set. I have a left corner light and a right corner light. It adds this diffuse warm softness that I love. So I'm running that as left corner light. So this is without the action, this is with it. And I'm going to decrease that opacity down to about 25%. So again, this is left corner light, that's without it. Okay, so that is a very simple edit. I didn't do much. I ran portraiture. I brightened their faces a little bit in curves. I ran matte finish. I erased that off of the face. And then Summer Matte and left corner light. And that's all I did there. Okay, last one. I think I've already gone over my allotted time, but I hope you guys don't mind. Okay, let me find properties for this one. Have I bored you all a ton yet? Doing these things always make me so nervous. Oh, that's not it. Thank you for your patience. Properties. Okay, for this one, again, you guys are probably by now noticing a habit. I shoot wide open 99% of the time. So this one was shot with a D700 35mm lens at 1.4. My ISO was 800 and my shutter speed was 500. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do, if you guys can see these little tiny red flags behind them, it was just something that was in the property here that we shot this at. So I'm just going to take those out quickly. I don't fuss over anything in my life, especially not cloning things in the background. So I do this very quickly, just making sure that there's nothing too noticeable back there. Okay, so that's that. Next thing I'm going to do is brighten a little bit in curves so their faces aren't hidden too much in those shadows, being that this was a really overcast time. The next thing I'm going to do is run portraiture. Okay, so now I'm going to go to ColourPop, if I can find it over here. I need to get my actions more organized. They're a hot mess over there. So I'm going to do ColourPop at about 50%. Flatten that out. Run Summer Matte. Oh, I love that. I think I'm going to just back it down to about 57%. Little vignette. You know, I think that that is all I would do to this one. I could add a little bit more warmth using, where is it? Set the Mood, which I love. I can show you that. So that's more warmth. I think it might be just a little bit too much on their faces. That's Set the Mood at 33%. This is the image without it. It's very subtle. Take it or leave it either way. And that is it. So to recap quickly, I have 3 action sets that I used on these images. So my indoor light action set I used on this one here. And then I used a mixture of the Sunset Collection and the Matte and Haze set on these 3. Now, since I was showing you how I edit, my process was a lot slower here. But what I typically do per session is batch. If you don't know how to batch in Photoshop, you go to File, Automate, and Batch. And you can batch whatever action you want on open files. Right there. To make the process even quicker. But getting them right in camera has streamlined my editing process to a very simple, easy, and enjoyable process that doesn't stress me out because I don't have to try to fix anything, just enhance the goodness that's already there. So I really hope that helped. If you guys have any questions, feel free to comment on my Facebook page anytime. I really hope that you enjoyed this, that it helped in some way, shape, or form. And I'm really excited to see the work you guys do after watching these videos. Thank you so much.